That completes a report on my activities this past month. I'll now go to Dan Ray for the Executive Officer's Report, file item 6. Dan, thanks.
Start off with a summary of what's going on in the water world in terms of our hydrologic conditions.
Red button down.
Red button down. See, I'm red colorblind, and so red button down is not that useful.
Left button down.
So if the ADA guys ever start recognizing the disability so many of us men share, they'll have to change out all your gear here, guys. You'll have a yellow button. But, this water year is just about wrapping up in terms of the precipitation. It's turned out, if you look October of this year towards the coming September, it's on track to be the third driest year in record. And following the rainy season, when it ended, we'd only received about half of our normal precipitation. So following 2 previous years of below normal dry conditions, we're on track to have the driest 30-month period, last 3 water precipitation seasons essentially, the driest 30-month season since records started in 1895. And the statewide snow conditions, the snow water equivalent, that's how much water you would get if you melted the snow down in a pan. It reached a season high on April 3rd of almost 10 inches. It's been declining ever since. The average on April 1st is 30.3 inches, so we had only 10 inches, and now we're down to 4.5. And water and storage, Lake Shasta is at 62% of its historical average, Oroville's 66, Volson's up to 75, San Luis is only about half its typical average. Robert Shibatami, who's come and spoken with us several times, reposted an article the other day about the bleak prospects for runoff given the low snow melt and the dry conditions in their watersheds, suggesting that the water we're going to have for the year is pretty much what we can see in the reservoirs today. The good news is that the little bit of precipitation we received in February and March has allowed DWR to increase the water contract allocations in the State Water Project from the 0% that they had been working with to 5% of the requested amounts. And contractors will be able to start drawing on those amounts in September, and that delay in delivery will allow that water to be kept in storage to help meet water quality and water temperature conditions to protect the environment and as a reserve against a dry next water year. And the federal contractors also, that very same day, the Bureau announced an increase in their contract allocations for exchange contractors on the Sacramento that would increase their allocations to 75% of their requested amounts, but south of Delta users, their allocations still remain 0. So, conditions are still tight. One of the other benefits of the precipitation was that DWR has been able to announce that they don't need to install the rock barriers to control salinity at those 3 locations they've been thinking of in the Delta. They don't need to install them now. And so they'll continue to monitor conditions, but that at least postpones and hopefully avoids what would have been a controversial decision. They'll be able to use the available water supplies instead to limit saltwater intrusion into the Delta. The State Water Board, for those of you who like to prowl websites, the State Water Board has begun to forecast on its drought website the pace at which water rights on Delta tributaries and other state streams might be curtailed. Is alarming to me to look at it, because you can see that on key tributaries, well-established water rights will be curtailed in some tributaries in July, on others in August. There are some waterways in the state where even riparians are unlikely to be able to draw water with this season. And so that has kicked off a whole new level of anxiety. Mr. Ajarian, who will be here later, described it in the newspaper as a whole new level of crazy. And I think maybe the only thing that's salve to us is it's likely to be a debate that doesn't have to occur here, because it's about tributaries. For those of you who want even more information, Jay Lund, who's a member of our ISB and will be here later today, is hosting a seminar on the drought at the UC Davis campus with a number of academics and policy experts from across the UC system. That'll be Friday at the state capitol, I'm told. And they've got some great panels. Somebody named Phil Eisenberg is delivering the closing remarks, so we'll have to see.
Jay Lund just posted this morning on the UC Davis web blog site a kind of a primer, a nice short summary of impacts of the drought and how everybody's favorite solutions don't always match up with solving the problems of the drought.
But yet to be illuminated by the insights, of course, you can add tomorrow, sir.
Yes, I'd ask Jay more questions than me.
You know, we've been keeping you up to date on the progress of our solicitation for contractors to undertake our Delta Levy investment priorities. We've selected a preferred contractor, which is Arcadis, the Dutch engineering firm, working together with RAND Corporation, the Santa Monica-based public policy think tank, and is an environmental consultant, ESA, experienced Bay Area and Sacramento area environmental consulting firm. We'll be entering into negotiations with them next week with the hopes that we can bring you a contract for approval at your May meeting. So we're happy to see progress on that. Other Delta matters, the Corps of Engineers has released a draft of their feasibility report and environmental impact statement on their Delta Islands and levee feasibility study. You may recall this is a project that was authorized at Senator Feinstein's request to examine the Corps' interest in the federal interest in contributing to the improvement of Delta levees. And though our staff is still reading the report, the Corps' principal recommendation is they'd like to participate in the restoration of about 90 acres of tidal marsh using dredge materials they have stored in the Delta and could use to rebuild elevations on subsided water, open waters. Our May agenda is a little crowded, so we may not be able to bring the Corps here to discuss that with you then, but we're looking for a time when we can get them in. Just one other matter I wanted to share with you. You'll recall a couple months ago we had a discussion with representatives of the Office of Emergency Services and FEMA about the memorandum of understanding, lapsed memorandum of understanding, under which FEMA and the state had agreed on the conditions under which federal money would be available to rebuild Delta levees should they be damaged in a disaster. And of course, at the time we heard the FEMA representatives say that their offer that they had made to the state was, I think, their final offer, and we would be wise to take it sooner. It might be withdrawn. In response, we've convened a meeting of state agencies and our offices involving the Flood Board, DWR, the Delta Protection Commission, of course, whose board represents in part the Delta Reclamation Districts, and the Governor's Office of Emergency Service to see how we can coordinate state positions on this MOU and maybe move it towards a more thoughtful resolution.
Dan, if I could interject, I think this is a good example of why we do what we do here at the monthly meetings. We highlighted an issue, FEMA reimbursement in the face of potential levee failures, and a problem was identified. And it's our role as coordinator of many agencies to try and address things like this. So what Dan just reported is an example of the follow-through, the follow-up that has come as a result of a panel that presented to us a month ago. And I think too often, we receive a lot of information, and you may wonder, what do we do with it? Well, this is an example of why we do what we do. So thanks for that, highlighting that and offering up some follow-up steps.
You also, last month, we heard from the San Joaquin Council of Governments about their regional transportation plan and sustainable community strategies. Our staff submitted comments on that environmental impacts report for that plan and on the plan itself to the Council of Governments yesterday. It's got a lot in common with the Delta plan. There are a couple minor inconsistencies adjacent to the city of Tracy, but they're really not significant issues, in my view at least. And I hope we can continue to work with them. They've been a very cooperative partner of the COG, and we really appreciated the chance to work together with them on this. Today, Planning Chief Cindy Messer is down at the Bureau of Reclamation and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services ceremony celebrating the implementation of the new 30-year plan to protect and enhance Suisun Marsh. This is a plan that was initiated back in the CalFed days. I recall suffering through more than a few meetings in its early drafting myself, but they've now reached agreement on a marsh management strategy that addresses the issues of both continuing the waterfowl operations there, improving water quality, and providing habitat for the endangered salt marsh species that use the Suisun Marsh. So that's a great opportunity to build upon. You know, this is one of the restoration opportunity areas that we've identified in the Delta Plan. A lot of restorations proposed there in the BDCP, and so this is a nice piece of progress. Doesn't solve all the problems in Suisun, but it's something to build on. And so that's a good outcome. A few administrative items. At the end of this month and beginning next week, our science staff is going to be moving up to the 15th floor. We've completed the renovations of our offices. They're underway right now, and they'll be completed promptly. And it's going to be great because we're all together in one place. It's going to improve our opportunities to work together, I think, efficiently. We hope to have an open house in May, and we'll invite you all to that. We hope you can join us. We also, as an agency, have begun an in-house water conservation program to encourage staff to do their best to save what water we can in our homes. We don't, most of us run vast farms or have big industrial operations, but we can do what we can in our homes. We're going to track our progress, and I think if we could, you know, Larry, we'd like to issue a challenge to your staff at the Protection Commission and maybe our colleagues over at the Conservancy, too, to see if they want to join us in that kind of effort. We have a little water conservation smackdown among the Delta bureaucrats here. See who can do the best job. One final little detail, you know, if you're in state government, every now and then you have to do these drills, and we did one recently to see how we had responded to Governor Brown's executive order limiting the number of cell phones in state service, which I recall at the time thinking, oh, brother. But people who had unnecessary cell phones surrendered them, and we became more conscious of how we used them. And it's interesting to see that since the executive order was issued, our cell phone bill at the Stewardship Council has dropped 60%. So, you know, progress in small things may be adding up to the better situation that we find the state in.
All butt burners.
So that concludes my report. I know, Chris, do you have something you want to say? Yeah. I think Adam Orchard maybe is going to help us out with a little report.